Welcome to the We've All Been There podcast. My name is Maximiliano. I am one of your hosts. I am joined here with my pastor, my lead pastor, Pastor Chad. How you doing?
What's up, everybody? I'm doing good, man. Excited.
Yeah, I'm super excited about this podcast. Do you want to just give everybody a little bit of an intro of kind of what we're doing today?
Yeah, man. Well, we're calling it the We've All Been There podcast. And maybe some are thinking, well, why are we calling it that? Well, we actually thought about calling it the Honest Pastor podcast. And then we started thinking, well, I hope that all pastors are honest, hopefully. And I think that's true about most pastors, that they are honest. But a lot of times we're not always super vulnerable. And so that was kind of the heart behind it, is that, we want to be vulnerable and relatable, and just, sometimes we go, hey man, yeah, we've all been there. And I know I love to listen to podcasts. I listen to several every week. And, my favorite ones are the ones where you can just relate to the people that are talking. And I know I've listened to some and I'm like, that's some great content, some great information. But it sometimes makes me feel a little deflated, because it's kind of like, well, we got it all figured out. Just do what we do, and if you do that, you'll be successful.
Right.
And man, yes, great content, but sometimes I'm like, I don't know if I can do that. Tell me a little bit more about how hard it was, or relate to me about some of the struggles along the way. And so we just thought, hey, we do hope we have some content that will be helpful to people, but we also want to just say, hey, let's have a conversation among fellow strugglers, and let's just go, hey, we've all been there, and so we hope to cover some topics that are maybe super relatable, especially those who are ministry leaders, those who are pastors, those who are serving in ministry, volunteer roles, or just wherever you've been, really, to be able to go, hey, here's some things that it's kind of like we've all been there. Maybe we can relate just a little bit and we can grow together.
Yeah, for sure. Well, for someone to be relatable, they got to know a little bit about you, right? So yeah. Do you want to start? Tell a little about your story?
No, you tell me. Let's hear yours first.
All right, fine. So a little bit about myself. I'll try to go pretty quick with this, but I was born in South America, Ecuador. Lived there for 6 years. Came to Broken Arrow, Oklahoma.
Boomer Center.
Yeah, Boomer Center. You already know. And so I lived in Oklahoma for a little while, and then I didn't give my life to Christ till I was in 7th grade. And so my best friend, who I met in 1st grade, was actually the person who just kept inviting me to church. And so fast forward a little bit, about senior year, junior year, I decided I want to go into ministry. And so I started looking at colleges, and SAGU was just kind of like top of the list, go Lions. And so spent 4 years there, pursued a ministry degree. And then right out of college, went into ministry for 2 years. During those 2 years, I spent my time doing creative pastoring. I was a kids pastor and I was a youth pastor. We kind of had like this running joke while I was there that at some point I would have everybody's job. And so that was kind of the joke. After those 2 years, took a break from ministry, spent 4 years in God's kitchen, and so was I working at Chick-fil-A for about 4 years. Come on. So I was working there for 4 years, and got the chance to grow and learn a lot from that, and then felt the call back into ministry. And so I knew it was there the whole time, but definitely felt like it was time. And so started reaching out to a few churches, and then the rest is kind of history. Kind of came to Lifegate. And been youth pastoring here now for almost 6 months.
Yeah,
so
man.
yeah, part of the greatest team, greatest people. So
we're so glad you're here too, man.
Yeah.
It's awesome. We're glad that you decided to be part of the team here at Lifegate.
Yeah.
Fitting in great, and so excited about that, man. Yeah. Excited about doing this together.
For sure. Yeah.
So hey, for me, I grew up in a pastor's home. I'm actually 3rd generation ordained Assembly of God pastor. My grandpa was 50 plus years ordained. My dad's about to celebrate 50 years ordained. I know they just celebrated 50 years of ministry and 50 years of marriage. Wow. So I kind of come by it naturally, grew up in that home. Didn't really want to be a pastor when I was a kid. I wanted to be a baseball player. Found out I wasn't good enough for that, So, but I really, as a teenager, surrendered my life to the call of the Lord. Went to SAGU too. There you go Lions. And but I didn't finish. We're going to talk about quitting here in a little bit. I kind of went through that, and, but I started working for my dad as a youth pastor when I was 19, and had a great time there working with him out in West Texas, Midland, Texas, and that's where Amber and I, my wife, we met in the church there and got married. And then when I was 24, I became the lead pastor of the church that my parents planted. And Amber was only 21 when we were the lead pastors.
Wow.
So that was, I don't know what those people were thinking, inviting us to be their pastors. Man, we were immature and young, but we learned a lot. We grew a lot. And then when I was 29, felt the Lord calling us to come to from Midland to Burleson, plant a church. So in 2006, we moved here to Burleson, started Lifegate Church with just me and Amber and my 2 little girls at that time. They were 3, and well, they were 2 and 1 when we moved here. Right after we moved here, Bradley turned 3, and we planted Lifegate in September of 2006, and God has blessed, and it's grown, and we're just so excited about that. And then later on, I had a son. He was our little surprise who came along. My oldest daughter was 12, and my middle daughter was 11 at the time. We weren't expecting to have another kid, but thank God we did. He's awesome. He's 7-year-old, so we got a kid getting ready to get married, 1 in college and 1 in the 1st grade. So we got our hands full, but yeah, man, God's been so good.
Yeah, that's super awesome. Yeah. I feel like I have to make sure. Last time, or the first time we kind of recorded something, I forgot to mention my wife.
That's right. You better get that.
I'm about to get in trouble.
That's right.
Please, Amy, have mercy on me.
That's the real reason that we recorded the first episode.
Exactly. So another part of my story, while I was at Chick-fil-A, I didn't meet her at Chick-fil-A, but I got married. We got married. My wife, Amy, she's the best. Love her. She's beautiful. She's hilarious. She's all the great things. And then we have a child.
You do.
We have a animal child.
A cat child.
Yeah. That's right. And she might as well be my beloved because she is the best. And I wasn't a cat person until we had Fritter. So there you go.
So hey, there's our first relatable thing right there. Like we've already recorded 1 episode and we trashed it and started over. So we've all been there, right?
That's right. Well, we've all been there. We've all wanted to quit.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So has there ever been a time when you quit on a goal or?
Well, I was thinking about it lots of times. I remember one time I did 1 day of Camp Gladiator. Signed up, got the shirt, did 1 day, never went back. So I was thinking even more recently, back over this past summer, I started working out again. And I worked out for like 3 months, like 5 days a week for 3 months. And all of a sudden, like just 1 week, I didn't work out, and then I never went back. I don't even really know why. And I look back and go, why? Look how far I would have been already if I would have not quit. I've quit on goals, like reading books. 1 year, I said I was going to read 24 books in the year, and I think I read 11. And I look back and I read like 6 of them in January, and so
start off strong.
Done that. I mentioned earlier, I didn't even think about this when I was kind of writing some stuff down, but I quit going to SAGU. I was there for 2 years on campus, and then my dad asked me to be the youth pastor when I was 19, and so I went home, became the youth pastor. He made me promise I had got to finish school, so I was going to do online. Yeah. Back in those days, online was different than it is now, but I did it for like 2 more semesters. And I hated it, and I was already doing the job I wanted to do, and thought I don't need a degree, and it was costing too much money, so I quit.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I went back later, and I graduated. I walked across the stage when I was 36 years old, but yeah, that was definitely a goal that I quit.
Still finished.
So I did finish, though. Yeah. How about you, Max?
Man, I was thinking about like quitting, and I'm like, well, I quit basketball in 2nd grade. I quit band in 8th grade. I quit my last job about 6 months ago, and so. I feel like for me, quitting is like such a serious word. It feels like it has like such a serious implication.
Yeah.
And I've stopped working out, but like I haven't quit. I've been working out as of recently in the last like 2 weeks. I picked it back up and I've been working out. I just took a really long break. Every November, December, I'm really bad about eating yummy food because it's like you got Thanksgiving, you got Christmas. I'm like, I'm about to eat those Christmas cookies. What I'm saying? Like, I got to make sure and eat all the sweets. Everybody's cooking. Like, I just can't help it, And so took a break on eating healthy. And now I'm eating healthy again. And yesterday, it's really funny because we had pizza brought in.
Yes.
And I'm like, pizza staring me down right in my face. And right now I'm doing a Whole30 and basically just eat very clean. And pizza is not a clean food.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so I'm like, pizza's right in my front of my face. I'm smelling the pizza and I'm just like, I just want to quit
Yes.
because I love pizza. And so, yeah, I mean,
And it was good pizza. I only had the toppings though because
I saw you.
I did
Yeah.
low carb.
Yeah,
so
you made a way.
Yeah, I made it happen.
Yeah, but
So,
for me, I was like, I can't.
no.
I could only eat like the meat off of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was hard.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've all done that, and I was just thinking, like, why? Why do we quit sometimes? Why do we want to quit?
Yeah.
And I even thought of, times when I wanted to quit ministry even, and that's a lot deeper subject. We might get into something like that later in one of the other podcasts, but just even on goals or, why do we want to quit? I think sometimes it's because we get discouraged. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you just get distracted. I think that's what happened with me on my workout goal last year. Was I picked up another kind of exercise and I thought, well, I'll do that instead. Yeah. And it kind of distracted me. I really should have just kind of kept doing both because the other was more just for fun. And, sometimes we get tired, I think, you just get worn out. Sometimes you get sick. Like I've been not feeling good the last week, so I haven't worked out in the last 6 days or so. And I'm determined that as soon as I feel better, I'm going to get back on track and not,
right.
just let getting tired or getting sick or whatever. So I think there's a lot of reasons, but I was thinking about it for the podcast. I think there's one big reason that we want to quit or that we even do quit. And I came across it in this passage that I thought we'd look at for a minute in Luke chapter 13. This is a parable that Jesus tells. And I just wrote it down here from the Message. I copied and pasted it in here so we could look at it. In verse 6, he says, "And then he told them a story. A man had an apple tree planted in his front yard, and he came to it expecting to find apples, but there weren't any. He said to his gardener, 'What's going on here? For 3 years now I've come to this tree expecting apples, and not one apple have I found. So just chop it down.'" In other words, just quit. Just get rid of this thing. Yeah. "Why waste good ground any longer?" But the gardener said, "Let's give it another year. I'll dig around it and fertilize, and maybe it will produce next year. And if it doesn't, then we can chop it down." And as I was reading that, I was thinking about New Year, I was thinking about goals, I was thinking about not just New Year, but just any time that we want to quit on something that we know we want to do, we want to accomplish. That really the number one reason I think that we end up feeling like quitting or maybe even quitting is found right in that passage in verse 6. It's the word expecting. Here's the guy who owns this apple tree, comes to the tree, it hasn't produced any fruit, and he was expecting to find apples and he didn't find any. And so he got frustrated, and I think that's what happens we come into goals. You do Whole30 with some expectations. I work out with expectations. I do the things I do as a pastor with certain expectations. I read my Bible with certain expectations. I like expecting that there's going to be fruit, right? Yeah. And then if I expect fruit and I don't find any, then what happens? I get frustrated. And, here at Lifegate, anybody that's listening to this that attends our church knows that we talk about this all the time. It's not a concept new to me, but one that I've really taught a lot. It's the concept of the expectation gap. Yep. And so when what I expect and what I experience are not lining up, then there's this gap. And in that gap, there's frustration, there's disappointment, there's discouragement, there's desire to quit, because I had certain expectations. And then, those certain expectations were not met. And I know for me, I expected, school would be easy and it wasn't, and so I quit, or whatever. I expected that, I'd see some pounds falling off when I was working out or whatever. But then when they're not, and you have expectations for how long something's going to take, how hard it's going to be, how excited others are going to be for you when you're doing it, how much it's going to cost, how jacked you're going to look after doing P90X, whatever, and when you don't hit those expectations, you end up, saying, well, I might as well quit. John, I like what John Acuff says. He says, might as well are the 3 most fatal words to any goal. Yeah. I didn't lose the weight, so I might as well quit. Might as well eat the donut. But didn't save the money, so I might as well go ahead and get the Starbucks. Or, for me, I know as a pastor, like I prayed all week long, and then attendance wasn't great on Sunday, so next week might as well just not pray so hard. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So that can be pretty frustrating. You ever experienced that?
Yeah. No, I mean, I was thinking even in the reasons you were talking about why do we quit? I mean, I was thinking for me, one of the reasons I quit is because I get bored. You know, I think that kind of ties in with being distracted.
Yeah.
You know, like I just get bored. I'm like, I've been doing this for like months. You know, I just keep doing it for months. But then it ties into what you said as well, just that whole like the progress. It's like if you don't see the progress, it's like, man, that's so discouraging. Like maybe if the apple tree, right, had like produced some sign that something was growing, maybe they would have been like, okay, I see there's progress, right? Even though like my expectation hasn't met, but I know it's like there's progress coming to my expectation. And so like I know for myself, like you were saying it too, like you just work out, you eat healthy, and it's like you just don't see stuff happening. And so I know for me, I think for myself, I get bored, but then I also like get impatient, you know, and I'm like, okay, well, I have lost weight, or I do feel better, I do feel healthier, but I don't feel my healthiest, or I haven't lost my target weight. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm close. I'll just give up now. And so I think for me, it's like I get so close to where I want to be, and then I'm just kind of like, I get discouraged, I get unmotivated, and I don't meet the expectation.
It's taken too long. I know that's been, oh my gosh, so many times when I'm like, you know, this is just taking too long. Why is it taking so long? And I think you can get in there, the comparison thing too, you know, maybe that guy even looked at all the other apple trees and were like, all these other trees got apples. Why don't mine? You know, what's going on here? And I know I've done that before. You're scrolling through social and your pastor friends are like, greatest day ever, you know, 47,000 people got saved this Sunday. And
you're like, shut it off sometimes.
And you're like, yeah, well, 3 people raised their hand, you know, at our church or whatever. And so that can be a big deal too, that sometimes you can get caught up in comparing. And
which I think the other thing that I was thinking about too is just like talking about all the different trees that he may have saw. It's like sometimes we quit because we're hurt. You know, like maybe that guy had planted multiple apple trees, right? Or, you know, had seen trees not work out. And so he's like, this is just another one of them trees. That's not going to work out.
And definitely past experiences can come in there. Because you can be like, man, I poured into to people before, and then, you know, they didn't respond to what I was trying to help them with or whatever, and then that hurts, and so you can get kind of you know, you can kind of get jaded a little bit, and just kind of, what's the use, and might as well quit. Sometimes you can quiet quit. Man, I know that's a big thing. I've read about that recently, you know, or people are going, I'm not quitting my job, I'm just not going to give my best, you know, or I'm just not going to really show up, and that's still quitting, you know, it's still quitting. So I think it's huge. So I was just thinking, like, from the story, I had a couple of thoughts. You know, I can't help. I just, you know, when I read something, I've got to be like, here's 3 points, you know, or whatever. But I did kind of have 3 little thoughts of what do we do, you know, when we feel like quitting, feel like just chop it down, forget it. We hadn't seen any fruit in 3 years. And let's just move on to something else. And the first thing that I thought here, it's really kind of a different way of thinking. That's kind of what the 3 points are. When you feel like quitting, you got to change your perspective. You got to shift your mindset just a little bit. And so from the story, I could see, I mean, the first thought that I had is you got to start thinking inputs, not just outputs, you know? So here's the guy who owns a tree. He had a different expectation than the gardener did, because he was thinking different. The owner, he was thinking output. He was going, where's my apples? Like, this is not producing any fruit. But the gardener, he understood that in order to get output, you needed to have input. And I can imagine what the gardener might have even been thinking, like, dude, you can't come in here and expect, you know, to just show up and get apples when you've ignored this tree for the last 3 years. How are you going to expect it to have any fruit if you haven't done anything to prepare it for fruit, you know? And so he says, what we're going to do is we're going to dig around the roots, and we're going to prepare it. We're going to get the roots healthy. And, you know, that's the thought, is like, healthy roots will produce good fruits. You know, so sometimes we expect fruit in places that we haven't done anything to maintain the root. and then we're expecting that there's going to be this fruit. But sometimes you gotta, like the gardener said, you gotta dig down a little bit deeper. You gotta do the root work in order to get the fruit to work. You know what I'm saying? And so, like, practically for me, like, sometimes I have to just change my expectations, and instead of focusing on the outcome of the goal, I have to focus more on the inputs. How am I putting in the inputs? For me, that one of my goals this year on fitness was, I really want to lose about 10 to 15 pounds, but instead of going, hey, my goal is to lose 15 pounds, I just decided, like, I'm going to make my goal to be 200 workouts this year. That's about 4 workouts a week, and that's something that I can control. I can't control what the scale says, but I can control showing up 4 times a week and doing the workouts, and then I think that if you do that consistently put the input in, eventually you're going to enjoy the outcome of that, but you're not going to be as frustrated along the way, because you're going, I can't control the outcome, but I can control my inputs. I know I struggle with this as a pastor. Yeah. And I hope my pastor friends and any that are listening, thank you for listening if you are, but I think we can all kind of relate, because I can get stressed or frustrated about the results on a Sunday. Yeah, man, I have expectation how many people are going to show up, and then if that many people don't show up, or how I'm going to preach, or how many people are going to respond to salvation, or whatever that output or that outcome that I'm looking for is. And then sometimes it doesn't happen, or I can be stressed all day on Saturday thinking, I don't know, and then on Sunday, all that kind of stuff. And so I've tried to even change that focus on that for me on Sundays too. Is like, hey, I got 52 chances to do a good input. I can't control the outcome. Yeah. Sometimes the weather controls the outcome. Sometimes the time of year controls the outcome. Sometimes people getting sick controls the outcome. All that kind of stuff. I can't control that as far as attendance and as far as how people respond and all that. But I can control every week. I'm going to pray. I'm going to study. I'm going to plan. I'm going to prepare my heart. I'm going to rally our team. I'm going to invite people. I'm going to love people. I'm going to focus on the one. I'm going to do all of those kinds of things, and just 52 times give my best input, and then leave the results, up to God. So
yeah, no, it's good. And I think as you do that, you create a discipline in your life, and it's such a shift focus, right? Because I think you're right. I think the world and even ourselves we're just so focused on, man, this has to produce something. Like, this has to create an outcome. And I think that's good. Sure. We want results, right? We want to meet goals. We want to accomplish things. But maybe if we shift our wins into what we're accomplishing on the way, I think it helps us to go, I'm getting there.
Even shifting, who am I becoming along the way? Yeah. Because, even if I don't reach the goal,
I'm becoming disciplined.
But I become disciplined, then that's more important than actually where I'm getting, who I'm becoming, and that changes even the way you see yourself, your identity, your confidence. Hey, the scale may not say what I wanted to say, or the attendance number on Sunday, or whatever it is that I tend to put my identity in sometimes, it may not say what I wanted to say, but I was disciplined. I showed up. I did all the things that I should have done. Then I start seeing, like, no, I am a disciplined person, and I feel more confident in who God called me to be and what He's called me to be and do, because I'm doing those things that I think those two, you should probably just start with, like, who do I want to be? And then out of that, now what do I want to do? Yeah. But also out of what I'm doing, it starts to affect who I am becoming as well. So there's a cycle there. So.
No, absolutely. And I think for me too, I've realized is that, like, if you work out 4 days a week, next year you may work out 220 days a year, because now you've established a habit, and now you can build on that habit. And it's that whole idea of, like, if you have 7 different things you want to accomplish, but you're like, okay, well, I'm going to do all these 7 things. Well, it's like, guess what's going to happen? You're probably only going to do 1 or 2. Yeah. So I just go, I'm going to just do these 1 or 2 things And then next year, I'm going to do 2 or 3 things, you know, and I'm going to build off of those things.
Greg Rochelle, I heard on his podcast recently, he talks about, that he just adds one discipline every year.
Yep.
And if you keep doing the other disciplines and you add one more, and if you work out 4 days a week, you know what you are? You're a person who works out.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So that's a pretty big deal. So the first thought was just, hey, think more about inputs and less about the output.
Yeah.
Second thought from the passage was you got to think fertilizer and not frustration. Mm-hmm. I wanted to call this point fertilizer and not feces, but that sounds bad. So, but what's the gardener say? He says, well, let's give another year, let's dig around, and then let's fertilize. And I started thinking, what is fertilizer? It is manure, you know what I'm saying? And so sometimes, the thing that gets us ready to produce the kind of fruit that we want, it stinks,
Come on.
Time in the gym, sometimes it stinks. Diets, Whole30, it stinks, especially when pizza's right in front of you, you know. Saving money when you'd rather, be buying the thing or going on vacation, that stinks. Waiting on the result, gosh, that stinks so much. But it is, I quoted Craig Rochelle a minute ago, I'll quote him again, he says the small things that no one sees lead to the big results that everybody wants.
Yeah.
And it's true, a lot of the things that are going to bring the results, the inputs that bring the results that we want, they're fertilizer, but fertilizer, it's crap, it stinks. It's not something that we enjoy a lot. And so, it's a process, but it's fuel for the fruit,
Yeah.
And if you're not willing to kind of wade through the crap, then you're not going to eventually get to the fruit. So instead of thinking like, man, this thing is so frustrating, start thinking like, hey, this is actually fertilizer for the fruit that I'm really wanting to experience. And, I know I've blown it at times, the last couple of years were really hard. I would set goals, and just with everything that's been going on in the world, I've missed a few, and I've felt some regret, felt some shame, felt some things. But, looking at it, I look back and go, actually, I learned some stuff during those seasons I would have never written down on a list and said, that's what I want to learn.
Yeah. But
those things are actually fertilizer as well for, for the next season of future growth that I believe God wants to bring.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I know for myself, beyond the stink of like going to the gym, there's also like the pain of it.
Yeah.
Like for me, I know for myself, it's like when I work out again, I forget how much it hurts.
Yes.
Like, especially when you do like something that involves legs. Mm-hmm. I'm just like hobbling around for the rest of like the next 2 days, and I'm just like, this is not worth it.
It's not.
But then eventually, like, that pain makes your body stronger.
Yeah.
And so I know for myself, like even starting working out again, like in the last 2 weeks, it's kind of embarrassing whenever you're like around all these other people who like feel so much further ahead than you.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I see your fruit.
Yeah.
But you don't see the fruit in yourself, and you're like, well, I want to get there. And so it kind of like is a double-edged sword, because one, it's like discouraging because you're like, oh, man, I'm not there yet. But then it's also kind of motivating for me, because I'm like, I can get there. I can do that. And so like it motivates within myself. Something that I've been doing called Orange Theory, and it's a lot of running. It's a lot of high intensity interval training. And so I'm on the treadmill, and there's like people next to me that are more fit than me. And I'm just like looking at how fast they're going, how far they're going, like all this stuff. And I'm like, if I can just keep up with them, And so I know that that's kind of the piece of it. It's like, sometimes when you like, it stinks together, it doesn't make it as bad.
Misery loves company, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
It is true.
Yeah. And so like, I know for myself, I realized like, it's going to hurt more than I think it is.
Yeah. I know we're talking a lot about working out and stuff, and that's kind of an illustration that fits well when you think about quitting, but it's everything, in your marriage, your ministry, your finances, all of those things. And I know, the thing about commitment, to something and not quitting something is that sometimes when you make the commitment, you feel all emotional. It's easy when you're, on New Year's Day and you've been, your belly's full because you've been eating all through the holiday and it's easy to get that emotional moment of, oh yeah, this is going to be the year that we're going to make the change, or it's easy when you're at a pastor's conference or something, to raise your hand or come to the front and be like, yeah, we're going to do that thing.
Right.
But then that emotion of that moment fades, and you come into the office and you get punched in the face, and it's like Mike Tyson says, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face, and that's when it's like, commitment is continuing to do what you said you were going to do, even after the emotion of the moment that you said it in is gone.
That's good.
And that's the hard thing. And so you just have to go, hey, even sometimes it feels like manure, sometimes it feels really frustrating, but I'm going to see the frustrations as actually fertilizer that's going to bring about the fruit, as long as I just don't give up and quit. Galatians 6:9, let's say, don't grow weary doing good, because at the proper time, you're going to reap a harvest if you don't give up. So, you just got to change the way you think. You got to think inputs and not so much outputs. You got to think, fertilizer and not frustration.
Yep.
And then the last one here I thought of is you got to think years and not days.
That's good.
And that's what the guy says in verse 7. He says, let's give it another year. We'll dig around it, fertilize it, and maybe next year it'll produce a crop. And the thing is that the owner guy was thinking days. He was thinking, I want apples right now. I want fruit right now. Yeah. But the gardener, he was thinking, hey, no, let's think bigger. Let's think longer than that, And I think we get frustrated and want to quit sometimes when the goal's not reached within a day or a few days or a few weeks. Yeah. But it might be able to be reached within a year, if you're thinking in years and not in days. Mark Batterson says, we overestimate what we can do in a day, and we underestimate what we can do in a lifetime. And so I think that's what gets us frustrated sometimes. And honestly, the story is a story of God. He's the gardener.
Yeah.
And so, a lot of times we're frustrated because we're not seeing the fruit right now, because we want the fruit in a day. And God's going, hey, I'm doing more than something that's just a one-day thing. I'm doing a long-term thing in your life. My ways are higher than your ways. What Peter says with the Lord, a day is like 1,000 years, 1,000 years is like a day. And so, we have expectations, that are right now, and God's going, hey, I got bigger things than just right now. Like, I want to take you to higher places and greater things I have for you that, what you're going through right now that, it stinks and you're frustrated and you want to quit, might actually, if you don't, in the end. Now, I did write this down, though. I was thinking, he said, chop it down. There might be sometimes we do need to quit, That might be another podcast that we need to talk about at times. Like,
we've all quit.
We've all quit, And when should we quit, Because sometimes you have to chop something old down in order to experience something new, Let the past die, kill it if you have to, for all the Star Wars fans out there. It's what Kylo Ren said. But, sometimes that's true, that you just go, hey, this thing didn't produce for 3 years. So it's time to evaluate and go, maybe I need to do something different, But maybe you need to give it another year.
Yeah. I mean, I think
God says and what he does.
I think the Bible talks about run the race.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we can get into a mindset of it's a sprint. It's not, it's a marathon.
It's not, yeah.
And so I think if we take life on as a marathon and go, you know what, I may have hard days. I may get hurt. I may want to quit, and I may take a break, or I may slow down. But it's the long play. It's the long run. Like, stay consistent, and yeah, you're going to mess up. You're going to get sick. Right?
Yeah.
Like, things are going to happen. It's just, that's life.
Yeah.
And I think just even in gardening terms, like, plants and fruits and have seasons.
Yeah.
And so there is a winter season. There's a summer season. Yeah. And so, like, they're going to be some.
In the winter season, you don't see any fruit. It looks dead.
Yep. And it's preparing you for the springtime.
Yeah.
And so, like, there will be seasons where you're in the manure. There will be seasons when you'll have the fruit, and there'll be seasons where you're preparing to go back into the manure, And so, like, there's a process, there's a flow, there's a cycle. And I think what helps us is if we know, I know when I'm going to feel like I'm going to quit. And so that way you can go, okay, I know something's about to, I know it's about to happen. And so maybe you need to get some of your friends to kind of help you out in that.
Yeah,
and so
yeah.
and that's something we didn't really talk a lot about in this, but like, you're not doing this alone. You know, like, you can quit in the dark.
Yeah.
And then, no one will really know except for yourself. And now you're just kind of like sitting in your own sorrows of like, man, I missed it. But if you have people around you, they can help you to know. And I think that even kind of goes into what we may talk about, in the future of when to quit.
Yeah.
It's like, they can help you decide like, I think you're okay to quit on this. Or
maybe that's not a goal that fits for you.
Yeah.
Maybe that's not one that's going to produce fruit, and it's okay. It didn't produce fruit several times, and let's chop that one down and do another one. I liked another thing that you said there that we didn't really focus on much, but I think we ought to take just a second and that sometimes you're not quitting, you're resting, and it's okay sometimes to go, hey, I'm not quitting, but I'm going to rest. It's like me feeling sick this last week. I'm not mentally. In the past, I might have just like, I don't go back to working out because I had a week off where I didn't feel good.
Right.
But realizing, hey, what I need right now is not to push through, but what I need to rest so that I can have more fruit later. And so, sometimes we think that there's only one or two options. There's only two options. Just keep going or quit. Sometimes the other option is, hey, take a moment, rest. Sometimes the option is evaluate the goal. Mm-hmm. Could I adjust the goal just a little bit? Maybe the goal is unrealistic, or maybe the goal is, I put too short of a time frame on it or whatever. I'm not going to quit, but I'm going to adjust the inputs because I'm not experiencing the outputs. That's really that's what the guy basically did. He goes, for 3 years, it hasn't produced. Let's adjust. Let's don't quit. Let's adjust.
That's a good perspective.
And put some different types of inputs here and see if in a year we don't see the outcome that we're looking for.
Yeah. That's good. I think that's it for today.
Yeah, man, this is fun. I enjoyed it. Can't wait till next month.
Any closing thoughts?
No, I just want to encourage anybody that's out there. This will probably find its way into another podcast later, but I read recently, there's a universal sign that someone needs encouragement. You know what that universal sign is?
They're breathing.
They're breathing. That's right. They're breathing. And, you maybe read the same book I did. I don't know. But the truth is that if you're breathing, you need encouragement. And that's what our hope is for this podcast, is that it'll be encouraging. You'll be able to relate and go, oh, yeah, I've been there before. But together we encourage one another, because that's what we want to see is you to be able to experience all that God has for you, reach your potential. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us to the We've All Been There podcast. We'll see y'all soon.